Welcome to The Impossible, where we empower others to face the impossible, inspire them to be impossible, and motivate them to do the impossible. And we are back this week with Austin and Riss. And guys, we're going to chat about a very fun topic, a topic that has been covered so much that it's kind of a cliche at this point, but we're going to try to give it a very interesting twist, something that's not as heavily talked about, and that is sacrifice. But we don't want to put it under the lens of, oh, you just have to sacrifice these things to get what you want, or you're sacrificing time, or you're sacrificing money. We're talking about it under a different lens. That is the lens of sacrificing self. And when we talk about this process of being impossible, creating that version of ourselves who could not or should not otherwise have existed, that cannot happen without first sacrificing that who we currently are. And that's a powerful practice. It's not an easy practice, and in fact, it's generally quite a terrifying process. Because who we are right now is someone we know. It's someone we're comfortable with. Someone who, even if we don't like them, we know what to expect. And when we take a step into that realm of the unknown, that realm of not knowing who we are without that current version of ourselves. Yes, it's a space to create something new and beautiful and powerful, but it comes with it a great deal of fear. And the last time we sat down and chatted, we talked about building courage in the face of that fear. Today, we want to take it one step further. Once we've built up some of that courage, how do we let go and step in to that impossible version of ourselves we know we are destined to become? So, thank you guys for being here.
Mm-hmm. It's going to be a fantastic topic. So
yeah,
I love it.
Thanks for having me again.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, Riss, you're always welcome back. That last one was so much fun.
It was so much fun.
I'm opening a Battle Flow right now, which you guys should definitely go in and check out. Battle Flow Nootropic Energy. So what's your thoughts?
I mean, you said something there that was so relevant, and just sacrificing self, and you get comfortable in the place that you exist in, the place that you currently reside in. And when you think about what your future could look like, or what your potential could look like, you sometimes, I feel like a lot of people falter to where they're like, how do I continue to be myself now and get the things that I want? But having to sacrifice very deep parts of you, parts that are that you identify as, sometimes have to burn to the ground in order to build up and to live that potential. And we talked about this, a little bit earlier, of just, with sobriety especially, you have to understand that to become, to get to the goals and get to the place that you want to get to, you have to sacrifice so much, especially in that realm of how you spend your time, how you spend your money and your energy, and who you're around. But sacrificing yourself and that person who you know so deeply, and those decisions that you know so deeply, you have to make a shift and understand that with how I knew I was able to spend my time, and who I knew I was able to become once I cut alcohol out, was a completely different version than who I was. And I didn't know what she looked like. I didn't know who she was. I didn't know how to really even get there, or what she could be capable of. But I knew that there was more to me than that version of me. So while it was a terrifying experience to sacrifice that, not knowing what could come out of it, you have to trust the process. And you have to trust yourself very deeply in order to understand that, okay, however I come out of this, I know she's going to figure it out. And I know that she's going to build a new version of herself that is capable and willing to live up to her highest potential.
Yeah, that's and that's really where the core of it starts. And that you brought up a really good point, that it's not even just the time, the energy, the money, it's the relationships too. And that can be a big challenge. Like both friends, loved ones, sometimes those people have to be let go just so much as our identity has to be let go. We spend a lot of time talking about this identity piece and how it's so crucial in, building that identity to become the person we want to become. But I don't think we've ever talked about before tearing down our old identity so that we can let go of it. Mm-hmm. And that can be such a challenging process. You brought up in sobriety and in addiction, and in things like weight loss and things like new jobs, new careers, new businesses. All of these areas require this sacrifice, the sacrifice of self, and it's a process that's not easy. But I wonder do we have to start from a place of, because you talk about building up that trust in yourself, that you don't know what this person looks like, but it's you have to have trust in yourself and faith in yourself that she's going to be there when you need her. Do you think it starts from a place of that drive for it? Does it start from a place of wanting to be that person so badly, or does it start from a place of just simply not wanting to be who you currently are anymore? And I think there's probably a mix of both. Mm-hmm. But what do you think is maybe easier to latch on, maybe more driving, more powerful to latch on? It's an interesting thing to think about.
It's really interesting, and I love that you asked that because, I've never thought about it in that lens before. Again, because we have this idea of who we are in this life that we're living, and you have to at some point make a decision of, is this how I want to continue to live my life? Is this life not good enough for me? Is there more to this version of me? And I think it is a little bit of both. I think it is, Chris Williamson has a quote that I love so much, and he says, I could always hear my better self clearing his throat in the room next door.
I get chills every time I hear that.
That's how I felt how I felt
Yeah.
for so long. I was like, I know there's more in me, and I know that I am capable of doing so much. And I had this energy. I always call it like the Energizer Bunny inside of me, that I was like, I know that I am meant to be here for something more than just surviving and going day in and day out, living the same miserable day over and over again, being overweight, drinking, being in, unhappy relationships and things like that. So, so there was that part of me that was like, I know someone else exists inside of me, and I know that she's just on the other side of that door. But there is the part that, I think I actually looked at my life before, and I would be like, well, I'm not that bad. It's not that bad. And I think we get trapped in that as well. Because you can look at the life that you're comfortable living and the self that you're comfortable with and who you're familiar with, and this person so well, so it's comfortable, and you can think, well, it's not that bad. It could be worse. I could, it could always be worse. Other people always have it worse.
Could be cocaine. It could be
cocaine.
Heroin.
Yeah, exactly.
I could
like
be
living in like a third world country without
job.
Food and water, right? Like I could be living in famine. Like there's so many different places that you can always say, oh, I could be worse. So I'm okay with where I am now. So I think for me, it was more so that I knew that there was more to me than who I was letting myself be comfortable being. And I was able to take a look at the life that I was living, and even more micro than that, just the day I was living. Mm-hmm. And every day it was sleep in until the last possible second, wake up, turn my Zoom on or turn my laptop on, fall back asleep so that my Teams was green so that they knew that I was online, go back to sleep, work a couple hours, take a nap, eat like shit, go to the bar after work, be really drunk, go to bed at like 2 a.m., wake up at 8 a.m., hungover, do it again. And it was just like this back, this day that I was living. And I was like, I have so much time that I am wasting being a hungover or asleep. And I'm wasting so much time that I could be working. And I had all these, I want to be a writer. I want to, be a teacher. I want to be a poet. I want to do TED Talks, and I want to, be a speaker, and I want to own a business, and all these things that I had just inside of me that I wanted so bad. But I was like, who I am right now is never going to be those things because of how I spend the macro or the micro, how I spend my day to day. So yeah, we don't talk about a lot of that space where you have to make that leap.
Yeah.
Like you have to burn the life down that you had.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it was trusting that future self and trusting myself and knowing this other version of me exists in the room next door. And I'm going to burn this previous room down so that way I have nothing else to fall back on. And I have to trust it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right there. I think that that better self, I guess we'll call them for that impossible self for for using our terminology, that's the stronger driver. And I think that it is a mix of both. And it's maybe not be true for everybody in every situation. But Tony Robbins has a philosophy where he talks about push versus pull motivation. So wanting to escape the person you are currently, that's push motivation. It's pushing you away, like I'm trying to run away from this thing. I've got to escape it. I've got to get out of here. That can be a very powerful emotion, and it's not a bad place to start. But it can only get you so far, is what he says, because really at its source, that's kind of a negative energy in the sense that you're just trying to escape that person and get to something else somewhere else. It doesn't have a lot of inherent direction in it necessarily. But the pull motivation is your impossible self, the version of ourselves we're working to become. That has clear direction, clear vision. We may not always understand exactly the outcome, but we can at least establish a vision for it. And that is one of those more infinite games, and that we can always be chasing that person. You know, we can only run so far from the person we used to be. Like for me, and I would imagine for yourself and for Austin as well, we're not really in a space anymore where we're running from the people we used to be. We're not really trying to, while we still work at it every day to make sure that we don't go back there, it's not something we have this present urgent fear of, I've got to change, I got to be this different person. It's more, I'm building this future person. That's what I think about in the cold plunge a lot. It's not escaping who I was, it's more becoming who I know I can be. And that Chris Williamson quote is perfect. And I get serious chills every time I hear it, because it's just so powerful, and it creates such a picturesque vision of exactly what that feeling's like. I can hear my better self clearing their throat in the room beside me. It's like it just,
they're right there.
Yeah.
Like that's how you feel like they're right there. And if I could just break this door down and get to it.
And they're not even like saying anything.
Mm-mm.
They're just like giving you that look, that sound, that feeling of expectation of, you should be better. Mm-hmm. You can be better. Mm-hmm. You're called to be better. You have a higher potential, and that potential is your responsibility. And that's a powerful driver for us. But I think in the moments where, and when I think back to that time in my own life, when I eventually got to a place where I made a change, I think for me at the very beginning, it was initially rooted in that push motivation, escaping who I currently was. I didn't know what I could be. I didn't even really know what I wanted to be. I just knew that I needed something different. The path that I was on led to a place where I could not allow myself to go. And you're right, we get trapped in these cycles of just living the same day over and over. Actually, Hormozy has a great quote about this. He said, most people live the same day every day for 6 months in a row, and then they run that cycle for 5 or 6 decades, and then they die. And that's like so many people's lives. Mm-hmm. And we as humans, we are designed for more than that. We're built for more than that. We're called for more than that. And when he spelled that out, I was like, I cannot let that be my life. Mm-hmm. Like that's not something I can allow to happen. And it's that cycle's so easy to get into though. You know, you fall into a bad habit or a vice or whatever it is. You come out of it all completely wrecked and saying, I'm never going to do that again. This is the day I change. This is the time it's going to happen. And then before we know it, we find ourselves right back in that spot. I mean, I did that countless times, mm-hmm. so many times. So what do you think is like when we're trapped in those cycles like you described? how do we take the first step out of that? What worked for you?
Great question. I mean, when I was making a lot of changes in my life, for example, I mean, the most like, I guess, one that I can hold on to is with sobriety of, I remember the day that I decided I was going to get sober. And I didn't get sober for another like 6 or 7 months after that, right? Yeah. I would tell myself every day, I am a sober person. I'm a sober person. I'm a sober person, even though I wasn't. And I would just try to, again, relearn myself. Like, you are sacrificing a part of you and building a different part of you at the same time. And you have to start just really putting yourself in the place that you want to be, and not falling into that comfort zone of where you already are. Like, you have to really mentally get yourself prepared to make that change. And it takes a long time. And it happens a lot with relationships as well. People say, women are normally checked out months to a year before they actually leave a partner, because it is kind of that period of where you are now envisioning yourself, and you are kind of mentally preparing yourself to get to this place where you're able to make the leap. And I had a great conversation with a friend about this, actually, and have done a lot of writing on it, where we called it the waiting room. Like, you're just like, cool. You're sitting in the waiting room, and you're kind of just like twiddling your fingers, you're thinking, you're maybe reading a lot. And you're kind of like prepping yourself of like, okay, like, I think I can do it. I think I can do it. And again, it's why women take so long to leave relationships where they're not happy in, because you're mentally preparing yourself, and you're getting yourself to a place where the decision has already been made, and you're so sure within your soul and within your identity at that point that you can rip the Band-Aid off and not feel anything. So that's what happened, especially with my sobriety. Like, I remember saying, I'm going to get sober. Like, I can't keep living my life like this. And, there was one day in July, I got sober. I said, I had a really rough day, and got drunk at like 8 p.m. I was throwing up, and went to bed. And I woke up the next day, and I was like, that's it. Like, that's done. I'm done. I was sober for about 6 weeks, and then my birthday came, and I was like, you know what? I've done well.
Oh, I can handle a drink.
I can handle a drink or two. And then the next 3 to 4 months, I guess the next 2 months were bad. Like, the worst that my drinking had ever gotten to, and the worst that my mental health had ever gotten to, because I remember thinking, I already did it once and I ruined it. Like, that like killed my soul of just like, I got sober and then I ruined it. And now it's so much harder the second time. And I lost that trust in myself, and I had to rebuild that back up. And luckily I had people around me who knew what I was trying to do, knew that I was getting sober. Again, I had been trying to like live this identity for a while now, and been telling people that I want this thing. And eventually got to a point on October 30th where I had my last drink, and got to the gym the next day, and like really never turned back. And as soon as I made it through that like 4, 5, 6, 7 week mark, I was like, all right, it is game time. Like, this is now your identity. So it was a long shift. It was a year of me even wanting to get sober, and thinking about it, and writing about it, and trying and failing. And then just one day it was cold turkey. And that was a year of preparation to get to that point. And I think that's relevant in a lot of these big changes of relationships, leaving relationships, and having a long span of time where you're kind of just emotionally, mentally, physically checked out. And then there one day comes, and it's you rip the Band-Aid off. And I mean, I had the same situation, and people who probably don't know me too well, I'm divorced pretty recently. But a year ago is when I decided to leave that relationship. And again, it was a year, if not a couple of years, of a slow process of, what does this look like if I leave? What does this look like if I stay? And that was, one of the more brutal realizations is, what does it look like if I leave? Looked way brighter than what does it look like if I stayed. Yeah. And I think that was one of the defining moments of, yeah, it's not that bad. You know, my life's not that bad. I was overweight. I was drunk. I was in an unhappy marriage. I just was selling my soul to my mortgage that I couldn't afford. And it's not that bad though. But I knew what I could have was so much better. And if I just stayed in that other place, I would be stuck there forever. And I would live the same day for the next 6 months, for the next 6 years, for the next 60 years, over and over again, if I didn't rip the Band-Aid off and make that change. But it doesn't. And when people ask me about the situation, how do I know to quit the job? How do I know to leave the relationship? How do I know I need to get sober? I never am like, oh, get rid of them. If you're thinking like, no, I'm like, sit in it, really sit in it, really take the time. Don't rush into any decisions. Really take the time to put yourself in the position of, what does this look like on the other side, and sit in that for a while before ripping the Band-Aid off. But if you get to a point where you can't, I got to a point where I just couldn't ignore it anymore, and I had to rip the Band-Aid off. And I knew that I had been coming to this decision, coming to these conclusions for a very long time. And when it came to it, it wasn't easy, but the other side I knew was brighter than the life that I was living at the time.
Yeah, that's powerful. And you bring up two really important aspects to that. Things that I get excited because I hadn't really thought about it this way before. You talk about how sometimes it takes a long time in the terms of years to get sober. And that's what happened to me. From the point I started making a change on a different path, it was 5 years before I totally quit. I would say it was about the 2.5, 3 year mark that I was really in much greater control of it. But I didn't have that last drink till 5 years after I decided or started moving in a different direction. And, I wonder if maybe one of the key elements here is, do we need to change our time horizon? Do we need to adjust our expectations a little bit? Because so we went in the gym and bench today. You would never have expected to go into the gym and bench 225 pounds your first time, benching in that kind of atmosphere, that kind of environment.
But I did.
But she did. Yeah, it was because you're impossible. No, I mean, none of us would ever expect to go in and just lift an obscene amount of weight our very first time, right, with not a lot of prior training. And that's very well accepted, well established, well expected.
We talked about that yesterday. When the first time I went to Monsters, I was like, these are some big guys, powerlifting, and I'm sitting there squatting the bar. But everyone was so pumped for me, right?
Yeah, because I mean, we knew from our end what to expect, and we get excited because we know what that journey looks like. But with sobriety, I think it's different. And one of the things we get, and I think getting into better diet patterns is a lot of the same way. We expect to have this moment of just I'm done drinking, it's never happening again. And then when we do have that first drink, we get in that, kind of, I don't have a better word, that fuck it mentality of, I drank, I ruined my sobriety, I might as well just
go off the
enjoy
rails.
It and go all for it, and then I'm going to hop on back on the train tomorrow. And then that becomes a cycle in and of itself. And so why would we have that expectation that the second we decide it, it's just going to happen, when we don't really have that expectation in so many other domains of life? Mm-hmm. And I listened to a podcast with Stephen Bartlett recently, and I've not had time to chew through this thought, so I'm not sure to the extent I agree with it, but I do think it's relevant to this discussion. He said, happiness only exists when reality outperforms expectation. And on the contrary, unhappiness exists when reality underperforms expectation. And I do think that's relevant to this discussion, because we get trapped in that negative cycle when we chase sobriety sometimes, because we expect when we make that decision, I'm just going to make this decision. I feel really powerful in this moment. I'm never going to drink again. And then if we do end up drinking again, even hours later, we have that crushing weight of the unhappiness and the darkness, the negativity of, you are a failure. You were just somebody who's not going to get sober because you said you were going to and then you didn't. You set up an expectation, then reality did not match. But what if we shifted the lens a little bit to look at it more of like a training process in the gym? You know, you're going to have misses, you're going to have failures, you're going to have days where you feel on top of the world with your journey, and you're going to have days where you feel crushing defeat. But I think if we stayed more married to the process of shifting that identity, sacrificing that old self so that we can build that new self and recognize it as a process that will take days, months, even years, then I think maybe we get a little more of that pull motivation, a little more of that drive, and understanding that you're probably going to mess up along the way. But that mess up does not define who you are. It doesn't constrain you to this prison of addiction. Mm-hmm. It just simply means that you made a mistake, you had a failure. How can we still recognize that we're still building this person? We don't have to let go of that. And how do we figure out how to do better the next time?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. The same mentality as being in the gym and literally training your muscles to work differently. And we do that with mindset as well. We're constantly training our mindset. You know, the way I thought a few years ago was not the way that I think this year. And that stuff takes time. I mean, if I think about like my entire transformation over like the first day that I honestly like, it probably like started like 5 years ago now, of when I even started to understand started to question my daily habits and started to be like, why do I not have time to do the things I want to do? Why do I keep falling into this place of resistance and of comfortability? And I started reading a lot. I mean, Atomic Habits was obviously a really early one that I read. And The Art of War by Stephen Pressfield is my Bible. And
also a great book.
Yeah. Or The War of Art, War of Art by Stephen Pressfield.
Yeah.
Read it. I read it multiple times a year.
Yeah. Art of War is also good, but
Art of War is also
very different.
Very different. Very different. Also great, yeah. The War on Art, though, he talks a lot about resistance and a lot about why we get stuck in these blocks and how to get past resistance. And so resistance training, right? You quite literally stretch it, and you learn how to, you continue to modify things as well and add on weight or adjust your position, adjust your settings. Like, you learn those things around a lot of times, because no, I did not just decide I'm going to be a 5 a.m. gym girl and wake up one day at 5 a.m., go to the gym, and then wake up every other day after that and go to the gym. No, like, I haven't gone to the gym at 5 a.m. in a couple weeks now. You fall off, you get back on, you fall off, you get back on, and you're just training yourself over time. And you have to understand that. And the same thing with sobriety, your training wheels are always on. And now I can, probably at this point now, a year and a half in, training wheels are like coming off, but it's still a decision I have to make every day. And there's still times when I struggle, and I still, I talked to Austin on my work trip last week I was around a lot of people drinking, and I had to like run away, immediately leave the situation and find something else better for myself to do, because it just makes me uncomfortable. So it's still a process that I'm working through, and I'm still training through, and that stuff it's never overnight. And I think, there's a lot of like really successful people talk about, it takes years to get successful, and then it's like an overnight, like it looks like it's overnight. Yeah. But people don't see the years and years and years of work, and the late nights and the early mornings and the stress and the hard decisions you have to make. They don't see all of that. They just see the overnight success. And so people expect like, to get sober, it's just like an overnight thing. Yeah. You choose one day, but it's a whole process. You choose, obviously losing weight for myself, that was an 18-month process, and leaving my marriage was a 2-3 year process of just getting to that point, and then it was overnight. But all those things take a lot of time and a lot of preparation. And then when you're ready to actually sacrifice and make the decision, it's not that hard of a decision to make, because you've been preparing yourself. Like, when you guys hit a new PR, you've been working on it for weeks, months, years. I mean, you started somewhere, you've been working on it forever, and you get to that point, you hit that PR, and then you're probably afterwards, you're probably like, that wasn't that hard. Right? Like, oh, okay. And then that's now your new standard. And then you continue to raise that PR and continue to raise the expectations that you have for your future self and for your abilities. And that goalpost is always moving.
Yeah. I love that you put it that way, because it actually helped me realize I think I was wrong when I made the earlier statement when I said, oh, we're not really like running away from that person we used to be anymore. We absolutely are, just not all the time. Mm-hmm. And you talk about like that work trip you were on. I have moments too. The best example I have of recent was last year we went to Sonic Temple, used to be Rock on the Range, and it was the first time I'd been there sober. And I didn't even think about it going in. I had no thoughts or regards, so I wasn't even thinking about anything until we walked through those gates, and I like walked through that same path I'd walked through so many times before as a totally different person. And it just hit me like a ton of bricks. And I actually remember I had almost no service, and I'm like frantically like texting Clayton, because he's been one of the biggest mentors I've had in my sobriety. And I was just like, dude, I was like, I don't really feel like a crazy urge to drink right now, but I am like freaking out because I don't know
how to survive in this
I don't know who I am in this space anymore. Where's my identity?
Mm-hmm.
And what he told me at that point, he was like, literally just take it a moment at a time. Just sit and talk to yourself about who you actually are and dissociate yourself from that person you used to be, and make the conscious choice that you're going to create a new identity in this space. You're going to create new memories, new experiences. And that something about that like spoke to me. And that's actually, I guess, the exact process we're talking about
Mm-hmm.
today. I had to understand, like, I just can let go of this person. Like, yeah, I have a very strong identity tied to this specific situation, this specific environment, but I can let go of it.
Mm-hmm.
And once I did that, literally the next day, no problem.
Mm-hmm.
It was just that first day, those first few hours.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes me think of a scene in a movie. We're going to have to watch this movie. It's called Peaceful Warrior. It's actually getting to be a pretty old movie at this point. It's got Nick Nolte in it, who I adore him. But there's this scene that is just one of my favorite cinematic scenes of all time. It's about this Olympic gymnast who's chasing this gold medal. And at first he starts out as this like hotshot gymnast, and he's drinking and partying, but he's still at the top of his game, living that like kind of playboy superstar athlete lifestyle. And then he's like one day like driving his motorcycle like a freaking ridiculous asshole and hits a car and flies off, shatters both legs. So he starts working to build back, and the coaches tell him not happening, not even remotely close. Like, it's done for you. And he goes through struggles of like, he's, a little addicted to pain pills. He's questioning like, I feel like I could come back to it, but everybody's telling me I'm not. He's in that scene of feeling like he's got a better self coughing in the room right next to him. And there's this one scene where he actually climbs up on some rooftop to kill himself because he doesn't know who he is without that former identity. And then when he gets up there, there's a dude already sitting up there with a hood on. And he starts having this conversation with this dude, and the dude's like, why don't you just go ahead and jump? That's what you came up here to do anyway, right? And he's like, well, I don't know if I can do it. I don't know if that's really what I want. And the powerful part comes when the dude, there's several things that happen, but the dude he runs into up there, basically at one point tries to pull him off of the rooftop. And when he does that, his hood flips back, and it's him. It's him. It's that most negative part of himself, that part he has to let go of, that identity that he's been running from. And there's a point where he's trying to pull him off the roof, and at some point the main character realizes, oh, I just have to let go. That's the only way I get out of this alive. I just have to let go. And in fact, that's actually a much easier place to be in than to try to fight against the person and struggle and to pull him back on the roof. It's just so much easier to let go of that person. And then the whole load's gone. And as he makes that realization, the kind of antagonist side of him in the specific scene says, he says, what are you doing? because he realizes he's going to let him go. And then there's this line where he's like, do you know who you are without, and he has this pause and he says, me. Oh my, it's, I love cinema. I love cinema. And it is just beautiful.
Yeah.
And then he lets him go, and the story goes on and shifts and everything else. But I just, that always stuck in my head, that do you know who you are without me? And the protagonist answers no. And then he lets go. Mm-hmm. And that harkens exactly to what you're talking about of, we don't know who we are without those negative sides of ourselves. And as hard as that is, as much fear as that causes, sometimes that's kind of the point. Because we have to accept that unknown in order to move forward. Mm-hmm. That was actually literally almost the entire point of your Parts Unknown series.
Yeah. Yeah, it was because I was already sort of struggling with that of which I had seen myself as coming into the diagnosis. I was working full time and traveling all the time and certainly enjoying life, but I was enjoying life. I can't. I can't relate to having such an addiction that the two of you had to experience, but I certainly had an addiction towards comfort and to not challenging myself in a way that would be able to deal with what I was up until that point. The person that was, because that for comfort, it was running away from what I was running away from a lot of things that I had not dealt with from childhood, and a lot of things that I had not dealt with coming from the teenage years, and then from university, and then post university, and I couldn't come to terms with not, like, I wasn't doing something music wise, so I felt like that 4.5 years was just an absolute waste of time, and obviously a mountain of debt, which we all get to enjoy, I suppose, and so that was certainly an identity that I was running from. But then when the diagnosis came, that was, for me, it wasn't, I would say for 90+% of that experience of going from who I was to who I am now was not voluntary. I didn't have a choice. When that diagnosis came, I mean, I had a month, or less than a month, 2 to 3 weeks maybe, to really process going from Matt, before the official diagnosis, but like whatever. I had a moment of Matt having to, like, really, I mean, sit me down. You were 1,700 miles away, but you had to sit me down and say, listen, man, the news from the CT scan, the blood work, it's really pointing towards something that we pretty much know what it is. Like, I still had the bone marrow biopsy, I still had the cord needle biopsy to do and a bone marrow biopsy too. But he's like, from how everything is looking, this is probably what you're going to see, and this is what you're going to hear. And from that moment until my first, round of treatment, which was kind of the beginning of March 2022 in Belpre, that was my time period to go from normal life, getting ready to continue to pursue my career in music in England, to you're gonna have to find a way to live through cancer, and so it wasn't voluntary. I didn't have that day to where I wanted to flip the switch and then eventually get over it. I didn't have that day of, I'm running away from something, so here's something else that I can kind of cover that up with. Like, it was, I had to survive, and that came with many, many benefits, obviously, because when you're not given the choice, you kind of tighten up the boot laces naturally. But also, the control that I did have was clearly how that outcome looked, because I still had the choice that I still had The control of which I had was, okay, I can survive this and we'll get through the treatment. Not knowing that I was going to relapse a few times, but, you know, obviously my beginning mindset was, okay, like I'll get through the treatment. I'll survive. I'm young enough to get through the chemo. And, you know, from the discussions that we had, and, you know, that my body can take it. It's just, you know, the choice that I had, the control that I was able to enact upon was what I looked like coming out of it. I had either the option to let myself stay in that sort of that pit, or in that abyss. And it pains me to admit this, but I can't tell you how alluring that was. I wanted to come out of the you know, I would say honestly, of the many things that you had done for me, really kind of didn't give me that choice was doing the powerlifting meet December of 2022. Because if I wouldn't have had, because as soon as we started the immunotherapeutic regimen, which would have been about mid to late September, you were like, hey man, like, you know, the chemo's not going to be as harsh. You can start training and all that stuff. I started coming down here more often, because I wasn't up there as often. And yeah, I was like, okay, you know, great. I can get back into lifting because I hadn't lifted for 4 months while I was doing the chemo portion of that regimen. And yeah, had the powerlifting meet, and that really brought me out. But if I would not have had that powerlifting meet and I didn't have you guys, I would have fell back into that abyss. I would have loved to have fallen back into that realm of comfort. Like I guess I still do struggle with it to this day. I do have that occasional experience of, oh man, I'm just going to take today off. And I think, I mean, what's a cheesecake slice? What's I still have an Xbox, you know, I can still sit down and, you know, and play some video games, and that'll be fine. It'd be fine. Just go grab a joint, just take it off. And I mean, even now, just saying that, you can hear the air coming from my breath, because it would be relaxing to a point. Just because I know how comfortable that it felt, how well that coping mechanism worked for the lack of accountability and responsibility that I took from the young Austin that I was just trying to protect so much, but I was protecting obviously in a way that was not productive or conducive towards a better life. And so when it came down to that opportunity and to enact a little bit of control, I chose the latter. And I've said this many times before, and I'll continue to repeat it, is that if I would have chosen the former, if I would have chosen that abyss to kind of dive into, and if I would have stayed away from you and the crew, I would not be here today. I certainly fantasized about not living anymore, because it was too much. It was way too much, and I was not strong enough to keep fighting that. And I think it would have been a relief. It most certainly would have been a relief. But I chose the latter. And the control and the power that came from that, from acting on that responsibility, taking that accountability into my own hands, and coming out with the most power that I'd ever felt before. And it, like you guys said, and I'll reiterate, it took time. You know, I came out of that first round of treatment. I was still a pile of garbage to a point, you know, like going into 2023, but then I had the second relapse, and things had to adjust. And then I spent 5.5 weeks alone in Houston. That was pretty well, I'm going to take my turn now. That was pretty fucking miserable. and then, you know, coming out of the bone marrow transplant, that was sort of the epitome of me finding, truthfully, because it was the last piece of going, okay, now I'm in the pole position of, I see what I can become now. Like I had visions of the Austin that the Austin that I saw kind of like through the mist going through all those years, and especially through the first couple of years of treatment. But then after the bone marrow transplant, during the bone marrow transplant, honestly, I still yet to talk about the things that I'd seen kind of during that month in December. And I'm not going to talk about it now, but coming out of that, it was incredible to see like who was standing. It was awesome to see who was standing at the end of the tunnel, kind of like, you know, the hue of them is all I could see for way too long. And getting to the end of that tunnel and really kind of breathing in what life had to offer. And for me to really grasp onto that for the first time ever, was certainly a transcendental experience. So, and now I have family and the love of my life, and what else does a guy need? Come on.
Dude, there's so much good stuff there. And I'm glad you brought up that story, actually, because I remember it vividly. Like, I remember it was at the old house, which I don't think, well, obviously Riss was never at the old house, but I don't think we've even driven you by it before. But it was at the old house, and I was on the back porch swing, and I don't remember if we had a scheduled call or if it was just kind of like a random call, but it was like 11 o'clock at night. I was sitting on that back porch, you know, kind of staring out into the night. And I just remember this feeling when we got to this point of the conversation. And we knew you were going to get to be done with chemo. We knew that, at least for the time being, the cancer had been eradicated, at least by all observable levels. And I just remembered back to when I walked out of that hospital, and it was one of the most beautiful moments of my life. But then I got in the car and we drove home, and I had nothing. Like, no plan, no strategy, no idea how to take that step forward, what that looked like, anything. And that was the piece that caused me to slip into that unrelenting darkness. And I obviously remember that very vividly, and I knew that I did not want that to happen to you. I was like, if there's anything I can do for you in the entirety of this journey, I cannot allow that to happen to you. And I think I had kind of seen little hints of that.
I'm sure they were prevalent.
when you had to go up to Cleveland, and you were, you know, kind of stuck in that basement bedroom, and you were just alone. I think it was just your parents' house you were staying. I could tell that was dark times for you. And I was like, we cannot allow this to be the narrative. And so I remember telling you, like, hey, I know you've never done a powerlifting meet before. Yeah. I know you don't really identify as a powerlifter. Right. But I was like, I don't even care if you don't end up ever wanting to do another one. But I was like, this will at least give you something. Mm-hmm. And as my guy Mark Bell used to say, he always says, strength is never a weakness, weakness is never a strength. And I was like, you're going to become physically stronger, and that's not going to make you weaker. And you can take this and find and lead it into the next thing, you know. And I think the key negotiation piece I was trying to use is, hey, you get to eat 3,600 calories.
Thank you. I was about to point that out, as well as like stronger, and also I get to eat as much as I want.
Yeah. Oh, is that what you did to me the other day?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
He's like, we're gonna make you really strong, and he's like, you're gonna have to. We're putting you in a calorie surplus. And I was like, oh man.
Yeah. Yes, to get stronger, you got to eat. So yeah, Matt was like, how many, we'll just do all the calories. And I'm just like, I can't wait.
I think I put you at like 3,300 initially. We bumped you up to 3,600.
Yeah, dude, it was like
your weight was
280, 300 grams of protein. And I mean, it was like, it was pounds of beef, pounds of potatoes. Yeah. Oh, I felt so Scottish in that moment, man.
Slices of cheesecake.
Yeah, all the cheesecake, all the desserts. And yeah, it was a good meet too. Yeah. So,
but it's like that was just a phase in a season, and like a 6 or 8 week phase, you know, and it was like, it was fun. Like,
it was fun, but I mean, I put the weight back on for one.
Yeah.
Because I got down into like the lower 170s during the Cleveland portion.
Yeah, not like a healthy one.
No, and it was not healthy at all. Yeah. not healthy at all. I felt and looked horrible, absolutely horrible. All four domains of performance for me, that would have been the lowest that they had ever been. Like collectively, my average was just tanked, and to be able to come out and, because obviously, like, as most people know, but you know, to reiterate, like getting into the gym and then looking forward to meals that I thoroughly enjoyed, like all that strength conditioning did was strengthen the other domains of performance, because then my ability to deal with emotions became better, because I was able to exert that. Like I was in that moment, I was still very much the emotional lifter. So like I remember our sessions when we first started training, man, just screaming at the top of our lungs. Just
oh wait, when you guys still do that?
Well, yeah, but it was much more.
It was even a little more violent. There's a little more control.
yeah, the knob's down a little bit.
We do it on purpose.
but yeah, and so I was able to really work through all four domains through that portion, and that just you drug me out of the fucking you drug me out of the,
one an episode.
Yeah,
one.
Oops. You drug me out of the tar pit. Like that was such a low, the lowest low for me, but that was so painful. It was so painful to experience, and that's why I was so open to leaving, you know, this earth, was because I was like, well, if this is painful for me, how can it be, you know, it has to be painful for everybody else. Like the people, like the ones that I love that are having to go, like, watch me go through this. Like this really has to, like, tear them apart. Why am I still here then? And I started to blame myself for having failed the first 2 months of treatment that we had down here, and then going up to Cleveland. Like I was blaming myself for not being adequate enough, in terms of, like, because I thought that there was something that I could control in this, and you know, for those first 2 months of Belpre, like I was eating healthy, and we were still training. I had a PICC line in my arm, and like the doctor said, just don't do bicep curls, which was fine. They were already huge. And she was like, don't raise your arm above. And so Matt's like, okay, well, we can still do squats. Yeah. Just use a safety squat bar so your hands are here, you know, and little things like that. But then as soon as I got to the upgrade to Cleveland, I found myself in this position of, wow, I failed that first portion. Like I took that into me being the failure, rather than my, like, oh, it's my immune system and it's the cancer. Like the cancer is just being that much, like, that big of a pain and that big of a wreck. I took that blame to myself. And so those 4 months, that was the biggest hurdle. And that's what led me to that, you know, kind of into July and beginning of August time of just really, really having a very gross disdain and distaste for life. And yeah, coming out of that was very, very, it was prudent for you to have come in and to say, hey man, like, let's do something with this, you know, you got to do something. And I did not know at the time as to how important that was going to be for me. And that is the reason why that I'm here today.
I think that's something that we talked about a little bit ago, of just, you don't know what you're getting into when you start making these drastic changes. Like, even you just saying, hey, come do this powerlifting meet. Like, you didn't know what that was going to unlock for you. You didn't know what that could potentially lead to, you now coaching me through training as well. It's just, you jump in without, you know, blindfolded sometimes, and trust yourself and trust that you are going to find whatever you need out of that. And I think that's so important, is, you know, you said something earlier too, of you actually said, you know, I don't know, you haven't been in a position of addiction like Matt and I have, but you were experienced that with comfort, which I think comfort is almost a worse addiction than any substance, because I think it's what everyone succumbs to.
Plagues the majority
of society is 100% comfort and staying there and not jumping in blindfolded, because you don't know what is on the other side. You don't know what can come out of this. But to have other people in your corner, and like Matt, who knows what it did for him, that it could, like, he had gone down that path before of what you could have gone down and continued to have gone down, and he didn't want that for you. So hey, come power lift, and I know you're gonna find something out of it, regardless of what it is really like what you have to trust is, I didn't know getting sober what that looked like for me, but I have to trust that I'm gonna get what I need out of it. I didn't know what going through the divorce was going to look like, but I knew that something good was going to come out of it. The thing that I needed was going to come out of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it takes me back to a lens you put on at risk at the very beginning, that I remembered when you said these words, I was like, I need to come back to that. Like, that's important. That's powerful. But before I go there, I want to highlight one thing to you, Austin. And you talked about how you didn't have that same lens of addiction that Riss and I had. You certainly had addictions of other sorts in your life, but it wasn't like the same, I guess, exact kind of struggle in terms of like alcoholism. But then you said, I didn't get to choose to be great. It was just kind of a situation where I was forced into it. And I want to make one change, or suggest a change to your own viewpoint there. You were put into a position of extreme uncertainty and intensity. And actually, when we were cold plunging earlier, Riss, you made the statement at one point where you said, I'm thinking right now about how you guys had chemo flowing through your veins, and if you got through that, I can get through this. And I didn't say anything at the time because I didn't want to take the like drive and motivation from you. But my immediate reaction was, oh, we didn't have a choice in that. Mm-hmm. Like, yeah, it sucked, but yeah, we didn't have a choice in that. We were, but here's the thing. I realized once again, I was wrong to have that immediate reaction, because there is a choice. We didn't have to be in that chair. We didn't have to go through therapy. There's no law mandating we walk into that hospital, sit down in that chair, accept that IV, and let that stuff flow into us. Similarly, you made that active choice. Yeah, it was through a situation that maybe you didn't think you were ready for, but you made that same choice. And you did it many times, but it was the day you decided you weren't going to give into it. Every day you showed up, you sat in that chair, you got through it as hard, as impossible as it was. You made a conscious choice that it was not going to consume you. And even later in that journey, when you had to go to Cleveland and you felt as if it were going to consume you, and you even started slipping down into that abyss, when I made that proposal to you about the powerlifting meet, you could have said no. I made the suggestion, but I did not pull you out of that. You pulled yourself out of that. And I'll tell you the moment when you did it. It was in that powerlifting meet that you were training for. We talked about the prep and the training up toward it. It was quite a powerful day at the meet itself. Mm-hmm. And you had never done a powerlifting meet before. I'd never done a legitimate, real powerlifting meet before. I'd just done the kind of fake ones we'd orchestrated in college. And so it was kind of a new learning experience for me as well. And we didn't really know what to expect. We didn't really know. And I told you ahead of time, I was like, dude, we're not worried about numbers. Yeah, we got ideas of what would be cool to happen, but we're not here for the numbers. We're here for the strength. And I remember on deadlift, we thought, maybe you'll hit into like the 300s. That'd be great. We get to deadlift, and I'll be honest, I don't remember what your opener was, but I thought we opened even over 300. I want to say it was like 304, 325. And when you hit both of those, you hit those better than either of us would ever have expected. Ever have expected. And you ended up on your third attempt pulling 352,
Yeah. It was a lifetime PR.
which is at least 50 pounds over anything we could have ever hoped for. And one of my favorite all-time pictures of you is a screenshot from the top, the video
Yeah.
where you're at the top of that lift, and it is a banshee cry like
Yeah.
no other. It is Austin in peak form.
I didn't stay silent at the top.
And I remember you held it there for a minute too.
Yeah.
And that was a moment where, you know, we talk about there's not always these moments of like just stark change where you just say you're going to be sober and then you're sober. You know, it doesn't always happen that way. But I do think it's actually very comparable to Pokemon. We've all played Pokemon. Everybody born in the 90s has played Pokemon. You know, you go through the game and you're using these Pokemon and they are constantly like leveling up. You get to level 20 and then 30 and then 40 and eventually you hit a level where you evolve. And I think that's kind of how the process worked. You were leveling up. Yeah, having setbacks along the way, but you were making this constant forward progress, and you hit a moment at the top of that lift where you evolved. And that's the moment you pulled yourself out of that abyss. And going back to what I mentioned earlier about something that Rismet mentioned, she talked about you have to burn your old identity down. And sometimes it is a violent and destructive and to a point dangerous process. But we see that same process, not just in ourselves, but in the universe, in our own world. And nature, in her infinite wisdom, will do things like set fire to forests, raging fires that stretches hundreds of miles. It is incredibly destructive to everything inside of it. And those fires are full of uncertainty, full of danger, full of loss, full of sorrow, full of change for that forest. And there's moments where that fire's raging and nobody inside of it knows what's coming out the other side. The smoke is thick. It's causing a fog and a haze that lasts for weeks, months sometimes. But eventually, when that smoke clears, at the other end of that is a deep, dense level of nutrient in the carbon. There's space in the underbrush that has been stripped away. And there are clear skies above for sunlight to penetrate and provide the exact combination needed for new, rare, beautiful flowers to bloom.
You're going to make me cry this one.
But I mean, it's true. Mm-hmm. And that's the process you mentioned, that burn your old identity. And when you said that, I was like, oh man, that's what it is. That's the answer.
Yeah.
Sometimes we have to burn to rise anew from the ashes and create something beautiful. And that's the sacrifice that it takes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Love it.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having this discussion today. That was powerful. And I love how many times where I thought I knew something and I was like, wait, I didn't understand that how I thought I did.
Yeah.
But
well, I love the shift too. And this is what we're talking about, growth for a long period of time, when you think a certain way and then you learn more things and then suddenly you're like, oh wait, like that was actually like wrong of me to think that way. So
yeah, and you got to just strip that ego back. The ego is that underbrush, and you got to be able to look at it from a lens of, oh, there's opportunity here to understand things differently and to grow in that capacity. And I love those moments, so I love these discussions. So anything else you guys had to add?
No, that was a beautiful way to end it.
Cool. Well, hey, I appreciate it, guys. All right, guys, you listening on Apple or Spotify or YouTube or Amazon Prime or the 1% of listeners who listen in on Buzzsprout directly. We love all of you guys and we appreciate you your support. We appreciate you watching and viewing these episodes. And if you got something out of today's episode, as always, the number one and only thing we ask is that you go down, click the share button, copy the link of this episode, paste it into a text message, social media post, or however you want to share it, and share it with as many people as you know whom you believe it would help. And I'm telling you, it will take 10 seconds, but it helps us do the exact mission to realize the vision we are here to accomplish at Impossible Performance. Because at Impossible Performance, we are striving to build a global culture of strength, fostering a spirit of growth in constant pursuit of the impossible. Thank you guys for listening, and as always, be impossible.